Yesterday, the Prime Minister flagged home quarantine as an option for international travellers from so-called safe countries.
So is that the way forward? We're joined by epidemiologist and World Health Organisation advisor Marylouise McLaws. She joins us from Sydney. Marylouise, we were just hearing from the AMA there, no vaccine until 2022 potentially.
That's a very reasonable assumption. I think any other assumption is very optimistic, because don't forget, the production is very difficult, apart from the fact that the pharmaceutical companies have signed an agreement, all 9 of them, that they will not rush and that they won't cut corners. However, it's the production that's the problem. And then, of course, we will have to decide who will get the vaccine, who is appropriate to get the vaccine, because not all vaccines will be appropriate for the elderly, and then roll that out. So we're looking at least until the end of next year, and of course the year after, 2022, for everyone to be vaccinated. So I think he was very reasonable, absolutely.
Do you think that Australians, or indeed, the population of the world, has put too much stock into a vaccine being the solve of everything?
Absolutely. And it usually comes from countries that have been very slow in responding. We in Australia and many countries in the Asia-Pacific area have been very fortunate that our leaders have been very early adopters to responding. And of course, WHO asked everybody to start responding in January, and our country did. So I think mostly countries like the USA, the UK, and of course the EU are really relying on a vaccine, because they've left it too late to try to get their numbers down, and their numbers are very high. And of course, we see the UK and the EU are going into a second wave. So it's very difficult for them now to even put in things like curfews, because their community's not used to this, and they're really finding it very difficult emotionally to even think about a small curfew with hotels, which are what we would call amplification events, going in, seeing your friends, having a drink, and forgetting about COVID safe behaviour.
Well, what about this concept of home quarantine? It's certainly gaining momentum over the past couple of days. Are you in favour of this idea, and how would it need to be policed?
Yes. Look, I think it's a reasonable solution. I think it's time that we started to think about opening up to our Asia-Pacific neighbours, but those that have very similar approaches, so those that have similar case per million, similar testing levels, behaviour of the population, but mostly the approach to pandemics and clusters by their leaders. And of course, having surveillance, electronic surveillance that can assist.
Would this help in pushing the reopening of some of the international borders, let alone state ones?
I think it could, but we would have to be very careful that we don't just open to everybody in the Asia-Pacific area. And of course, I can't see us opening to the EU or the UK, and definitely not the USA. But places like, of course, New Zealand, Hong Kong, China, South Korea. Japan is a little tricky. They have a large number of infections, and their testing rate's very low. So they'd have to start increasing their testing rates. And certainly the Asia-Pacific nations that have very, very low levels and quite reasonable levels of testing.
Marylouise McLaws, as always, thanks for taking us through it.
Stay well.